He held her hand and didn't let go. Dylan Wang's public gesture stuns the industry. The cameras weren't supposed to catch it. The whispers weren't supposed to spread. But when Dylan Wang stepped into that crowded award show ballroom, every second that followed shattered what the industry thought it knew. Shun Yu was already there, flawless under the chandelier lights, her hair falling in soft waves that framed a face millions had missed seeing beside his. For weeks, the world had been speculating. Were they still rebuilding what was broken? Were they walking away for good? Or was their silence a quiet promise to each other, hidden away from the world? The tension in the room was alive, vibrating like a held breath. Reporters exchanged glances, cameras shifted focus, and even Bai Lu, seated a few tables away with Zhong Linghe, tilted her head as if she could feel the atmosphere change. Then Dylan crossed the floor. Not cautiously, not calculating, but with the same deliberate, unapologetic stride that once carried him into Shun Yu's life when neither of them knew how complicated love could be. Every step was a question. Every step was an answer. He reached her table, paused only long enough to search her eyes, and then, without a single word, reached for her hand. And didn't let go. The room erupted, not in noise, but in stunned silence. 1,000 flashes froze the moment, preserving the exact second when history rewrote itself in front of an audience that couldn't believe what they were seeing. The gesture that spoke louder than words. It wasn't just a handhold. It was a declaration. A challenge. A revelation. This was the same Dylan Wang who had been photographed leaving hospitals with his head down, the same man who had been rumored to hide a medical scare from her, the same heart that had watched Shun Yu collapse in his arms in an elevator weeks before. And now, under the scrutiny of the industry, he was telling everyone and her that some bonds don't break, even when the world tries to pry them apart. Witnesses swear they saw Shun Yu's lips tremble, as if she might speak or cry, but instead, she let her fingers intertwine with his. Slow. Gentle. Absolute. From the corner of the room, Bai Lu's reaction was impossible to miss. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes narrowing as if searching for answers she couldn't quite ask out loud. Zhong Linghe, ever composed, placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. But even that small movement couldn't hide the shock that rippled through the room. A room full of gasps. The cameras zoomed in mercilessly. Clips began hitting social media before the applause even started for the next presenter. Fans online described it as cinematic, unreal, like a movie we weren't supposed to watch. On Weibo, hashtags exploded. #DylanShun handhold. #he didn't he let go. #industry stunned. But what the crowd didn't see was what happened seconds before the cameras caught up. According to a crew member working backstage, Dylan had been pacing in the hallway for several minutes before entering the ballroom. He looked nervous, the source said. Like he'd made up his mind about something that would change everything. And it did. Backstage before the gesture. Earlier that night, Dylan had been spotted talking quietly with his manager. Their exchange was intense, but brief. If you do this, there's no going back, the manager reportedly warned. Dylan's reply was simple, almost too soft for the witness to catch. There's no going back anyway. Those words now haunt fans who have followed every twist of this story, from the elevator collapse that nearly ended in tragedy, to the whispered hospital visits, to the cryptic posts and tearful interviews that left millions speculating. Shun Yu's side of the story. Shun Yu wasn't expecting him. That much became clear when an insider from her team later revealed she had considered skipping the event altogether. She didn't want drama, the source said. She didn't want whispers. But something told her to come. And maybe, some part of her hoped he'd be there. When Dylan's fingers wrapped around hers, Shun Yu reportedly whispered something, too quiet for the microphones. But a lip reader later told a fan forum she mouthed the words. You can't just do this here. To which Dylan, without flinching, mouthed back. I can't not. Social media meltdown. Within minutes, the internet was in chaos. GIFs of their fingers interlocking flooded Twitter and Weibo. Fans who had been divided, some supporting Shun Yu moving on, others begging for a reunion, suddenly united under one sentiment. This wasn't for the cameras. This wasn't for PR. This was real. One viral tweet read. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. I'm crying at my desk. Another said. Years from now, we'll talk about this moment like it was a scene from a drama. But it wasn't scripted. It was raw. It was them. Bailu's lingering glance. The subplot no one can ignore is Bailu's reaction. Her history with Dylan, professional and rumored personal, has always hovered in the background of these narratives. Her glance across the room wasn't filled with malice, but with something far heavier, recognition. Fans dissected her expression frame by frame. Some say it was heartbreak. Others, understanding. But a particularly perceptive fan summed it up best. Sometimes, you don't need to be the one holding the hand to know whose hand it was always meant to be. The industry reacts. Producers, directors, and co-stars began weighing in almost immediately. A veteran filmmaker posted, "In this industry, gestures are often calculated. This wasn't. That's why it worked." A stylist who had dressed Dylan earlier that evening posted a cryptic Instagram story of the suit he wore, captioned simply, "He chose bold tonight." And not just the suit. The moment after, as the award show continued, Dylan and Shen Yu kept their hands linked under the table, unseen by most cameras. When Shen Yu left for a brief restroom break, Dylan waited by the door, refusing to return to his seat until she was back by his side. Later, as the lights dimmed for the final performance, a fan seated behind them captured a blurry photo, Dylan's head bent slightly toward Shen Yu's, whispering something that made her cover her mouth to hide a laugh. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. It wasn't fireworks. It was quieter. But sometimes, quiet is louder than any headline. The aftermath. By the time they left the venue, paparazzi were waiting outside. Dylan held her hand again as they stepped into the cool night air, even when flashes exploded and reporters shouted questions. "Are you two back together? Is this official?" Dylan didn't answer. He simply tightened his grip on her hand and guided her to the car. Shen Yu, for her part, didn't pull away. Not once. Why this moment matters. In an industry where every move is scrutinized, this wasn't strategy. It wasn't convenience. It was risk. It was vulnerability. And that's what stunned the industry, not just the handhold, but the courage it represented. Fans will remember this moment as the night Dylan Wang reminded the world that some stories aren't finished, some loves don't fade, and some gestures are worth everything. And somewhere, behind all the noise, two people who have weathered storms together are learning to hold on and not let go. The ballroom lights dimmed for the next award presentation, but no one was really watching the stage anymore. Their eyes kept drifting back to Dylan and Shen Yu, still seated at their table, still locked together by a single unbroken touch. The MC's voice echoed like background noise. This was the real show, the one no one had expected. Cameras caught the subtle things most would have missed, Dylan's thumb tracing slow circles on the back of her hand, Shen Yu's lashes trembling as if holding back tears, the way she exhaled a shaky breath and tilted her face toward him for just a heartbeat. A producer from a rival studio, sitting 2 tables away, whispered to her companion, "This is going to break the internet tonight." Her companion, a veteran of celebrity scandals, could only nod. They both knew the clip would be replayed millions of times before morning. Bailu's glance lingered longer this time. Her polished smile never faltered, but her wine glass trembled almost imperceptibly when she lifted it. Zhong Linghe leaned closer to her and murmured something, words no microphone could catch. She nodded stiffly, her eyes never leaving Dylan's hand around Shen Yu's. A burst of applause snapped the room out of its trance as the next award was announced. Shen Yu clapped politely, but her free hand never moved from Dylan's. The tension wasn't awkward anymore, it was electric. Backstage, an assistant rushed a text message to Dylan's manager, "It's everywhere already." Screens in the production booth lit up with clips going viral, different angles of the same moment. One showed Dylan's gaze softening as Shen Yu looked up at him, another caught Shen Yu squeezing his hand back, her fingers trembling but firm. The internet had found its new obsession. Hashtags multiplied. #DylanShen forever. #handhold that broke the internet. #he didn't let go even once. Fan accounts began pairing the new footage with old clips, interviews where Dylan had once teased Shen Yu, or behind-the-scenes videos where he'd protectively guided her through a crowd. They captioned them with lines like, It was always her. At their table, a waiter approached cautiously with champagne. Dylan glanced up, nodded politely, then returned to Shunyu without missing a beat. She looked down at their entwined fingers and whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "You really didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he replied softly. "I waited too long to do this." Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she glanced around the room, the cameras, the flashing lights, the whispers, and then back at him. For a fleeting second, her mask slipped. Relief flickered across her face, mingled with something even deeper, a quiet, vulnerable joy. Across the ballroom, a young actor leaned toward his date and muttered, "That's not PR. That's love." The performance on stage ended. The room clapped again. And then Dylan did something even bolder. He stood, still holding Shunyu's hand, and helped her to her feet. Gasps rippled through the tables nearest them. A photographer captured the exact moment their silhouettes, hand in hand, were framed against the golden lights of the stage backdrop. It would become the image plastered across every entertainment site by morning. As they stepped toward the back exit to avoid the main press line, a few industry insiders followed them with their eyes, whispering frantically. A stylist messaged her group chat, "I've worked with both of them. This isn't a stunt." He looked terrified, but determined. Outside the ballroom, the hallway was quieter, though the muffled noise of the event still hummed through the walls. Dylan paused, letting her catch her breath. Shunyu leaned against the wall for a moment, eyes closed. "You just changed everything," she whispered. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I just stopped pretending." For a heartbeat, the world outside didn't exist, the awards, the cameras, the fans. It was just the two of them, standing under the soft glow of an emergency exit sign, two people who had been through too much to stay silent any longer. A security guard at the end of the corridor glanced their way, pretending not to notice. But he would later tell a friend, the way he held her hand, like she was the last safe place on earth, "I've never seen anything like it." Meanwhile, inside the ballroom, Bai Lu finally excused herself from her table. She headed toward the restroom but stopped midway, her composure slipping just enough for Zhonglinghe to see. He followed quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She didn't cry, she wasn't the type. But she admitted under her breath, "I think I always knew it would end like this." Social media notifications were already breaking records. A clip of Dylan brushing his thumb across Shun Yu's knuckles hit 5 million views in under 20 minutes. Fans wrote captions like, "No drama script could top this moment." Others speculated about what Dylan had whispered to her before they left the room. By the time Dylan and Shun Yu reached the parking garage, reporters had already gathered outside. The couple paused just inside the door, watching the flashes through the tinted glass. Shun Yu hesitated, but Dylan gave her hand another reassuring squeeze. "One step at a time," he murmured. When they finally emerged, the crowd erupted in questions. "Are you two together again? Was that a confirmation? Is this your way of going public?" Dylan didn't say a word. He opened the car door for her, still holding her hand as she slid inside. Then he joined her, the world's noise muffled as the doors closed. Inside the car, Shunyu let out a shaky laugh, half disbelief, half relief. "You really didn't let go once," she teased softly. He turned to her, the city lights flickering across his face. "I won't," he said simply. The car pulled away, but the internet wasn't done. Fan edits began appearing within minutes, set to dramatic music, replaying the moment over and over. Entertainment channels scrambled to rework their headlines. Opinion pieces were already forming. Why Dylan Wang's gesture may be the most important celebrity moment of the year. Back in the ballroom, the host joked nervously to fill the sudden energy gap. "Well, that was some tough competition for tonight's biggest surprise." The audience laughed, but the undercurrent was clear. No award handed out that night would be remembered like Dylan Wang holding Shunyu's hand and refusing to let go. The industry had seen power couples, PR stunts, and scandalous whispers. But what they witnessed tonight was different. It was vulnerable, risky, real. And in a world built on scripted moments, that's exactly why it stunned everyone. Somewhere in the city, as their car disappeared into the night, Dylan still hadn't let go. And Shunyu, for once, didn't want him to.